Now, let's bring in political analyst Javed Rana to discuss the latest situation in the Gaza Strip. Good afternoon, Javed. Thanks for joining us on the program once again.
Thank you.
Now, there's been a significant development since I spoke to you last. Israeli ground forces conducted an incursion into the northern Gaza Strip on Thursday, targeting multiple Hamas sites there before. Now, in the instance that this should actually move further into regional countries there, what are the implications of this conflict for global security looking like?
Well, I think to begin with, Israeli armies trying to test the water, how much military strength Hamas has. And I think they did face resistance, and that is the reason they have withdrawn. And now at what time this ground offensive would be launched, it is anybody's guess. But going by what we are seeing on the ground, it seems that unless they make Gaza into a kind of a destruction site, and they leave nothing behind in terms of the buildings, I think they would not go for a ground offensive. They are still scared. They are fearing Hamas underground network, and they are retaining their military strength. And I think before launching this military operation, certainly they did have their own geostrategic calculations in what manner they would respond back to Israel. So I think the bigger picture which is developing in the region, that is a terrible. It is a more scary picture. Right now, as we speak, around 24 journalists have been killed. Families of many of the journalists have also been eliminated. There are around 7,000 people who have been killed. 17,000 people are maimed, they are injured. There is no fuel, no electricity, no food. They are starving people in Gaza to death in this modern time and age. And when UN Secretary General say that this military operation by Hamas did not happen in vacuum, this is known universal fact. But even then, the kind of the angry reaction we have seen from Tel Aviv, that shows that Israel doesn't want any hostility anywhere, even an iota of it. Now, UN is an independent organization. What they have said is just tip of the iceberg of the scale of the massacre which Israel has conducted inside Gaza. Now, obviously, this war is going to overspell sooner or later to the bordering regions, like in Egypt, like since in the West, Israel has also started carrying out airstrikes, and they are also conducting nightly raids. More than 100 people have been killed there. More than 1,400 youngsters, mostly youngsters, minors, they have been arrested. So it means that this war can also possibly spill over to the Jordan from the West Bank. And as everybody talks about to bring an end to this conflict, Israel is not listening. It seems that perhaps the regional countries, more importantly, the Arab countries and the world at large, the Western countries, they are allowing Israel to starve people to death, and nobody cares about it.
There is a lot of aid that has been able to go through now since we spoke last, but how much relief has that brought? We know that the people in Gaza need so much more than what they've received, particularly in the hospitals. The doctors are unable to care for the patients there. Do you think that there will be a diplomatic resolution in the near term, at least to try and get this aid to reach the people in Gaza? What's that looking like?
Let's look at what the UN Security Council has been doing. There has been clash between Russia-led bloc and the US-led bloc. There is a subjective approach on the part of the USA and other Western countries. They want pauses in terms of the military action by Israel on Gaza, while Russia wants a ceasefire and they want to go for a settlement, some sort of settlement. I think the reason West wants a pause in Gaza, simply they want some of the prisoners of war who are still with Hamas in underground tunnels. They want their release. They are exploiting people there. They're starving to the death. And the only little fuel that we have seen getting into Gaza is as a matter of fact, nobody talks about it, that is in return of releasing these 4 prisoners of war, which Hamas has released apparently on humanitarian grounds. But my understanding is that there was perhaps quid pro quo in return of this fuel, in return of this small amount of food, and in return of small amount of some stocks of the medicine. They have been set free. I think the picture that is developing again, everybody is allowing people inside Gaza to be starved to the death, and when there will be nobody, and only then I think Israel, the apartheid state, would be in a position to launch a ground offensive. But I think no one is going to welcome them. Hamas has their underground tunnel network, and they would resurface from there, and I think they will show a lot of resistance. Israel thinks that it can get rid of Hamas. For the sake of the argument, if there is no Hamas inside Gaza, there may be another kind of organization which may have a different nomenclature, but there would be resistance. Hamas is not an organization, as a matter of fact. It is an ideology which is based on resistance. It is an ideology which gets its inspiration from the Holy Quran to undertake jihad against an oppressor, against an aggressor. So in coming days and weeks, we will see that there would be resistance from Gaza. And if Israel thinks that they would eliminate Hamas altogether with the backing of the West by silencing the Arab countries and the Muslim countries, it is not going to happen. What is very alarming is that Israel is not listening to anyone in the West, even privately. USA, the other countries have been giving them a piece of advice that they need to go for some sort of arrangement with the Palestinian to actually overshadow Hamas. Netanyahu is not willing to accept it. He wants to launch a ground offensive on the debris of this destruction and these civilian people. Look at how many children have been killed. 40 to 50% among the dead are children, and then the rest of them are elderly women. There is no fuel in the hospitals. Most of the hospitals have been shut down. There are cases of pregnancies. Look at that kind of tragedies which are occurring there. Nobody looks at it. And children are being killed one after the other, and Israel saying they're killing the members of Hamas. Does it make sense? It is a complete nonsense. Israel is calling the military operation by Hamas, in which 1,400 people were killed. Most of them were illegal settlers and the members of the Israeli army. They are calling them as a massacre. While they have killed more than 7,000 people, they are calling them that they are the terrorists. Does it make sense? And then US president is also saying that the Hamas is a coward and Israeli army is perhaps very brave. If they are brave enough, let them launch a ground offensive there. Why they have resorted to the carpet bombing? The reason is, the bitter fact is that the Israeli army is a very coward. That is why they have hugely relied on its air force power, and they have gone for a collective punishment to the people of Gaza. They think by giving a collective punishment to the unarmed Palestinians, they can widen the gap between Hamas on one side and on Al-Jihad organization on the other side, and with the rest of the population in Gaza. That is not going to happen. My understanding is that it has brought more national solidarities among Palestinians. And then again, the trouble right now is that people from Gaza, they cannot go inside Egypt because it has blocked the Rafah crossing. And more importantly, Israel doesn't want that to happen, at least for the time being, until there is a kind of arrangement where all people from Gaza are expelled altogether so that it can reoccupy Gaza. That is the real design of the apartheid state, which it is pursuing, and the West is allowing it, and everybody is silent. I think Muslim countries need to go for at least go for some sort of a collective statement, maybe from the forum of OIC, to give threat to the Israel for a retaliatory military action if it does not stop conducting this relentless genocide in Gaza. Otherwise, in this given situation, I really doubt that Israel will halt this corporate bombing. See at the scale, the kind of the pictures that we are seeing from Gaza, they are terrible. And nobody talks about it in West. They are still saying that Israel has a right to defend itself, but why can't Palestinians have the right to defend themselves? The operation launched by Hamas was in retaliation to everyday killing of Palestinians, their humiliation at the hands of the Israel, and then the kind of the desecration they have been conducting of Al-Quds Sharif, the third holiest site of Islam. I think that was the reaction. Now, the retaliation which has come from Hamas, they don't have a right because they are under the occupation. And nobody talks about the international law. International law encourage the Hamas and the under attack Palestinian to retaliate. They can defend themselves. But for the international community, so-called international community in the West, they think the right to defend itself lies only with the Israel.
Okay, now on the response from the West that you've very well articulated there, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was brought under fire for his discourse, and the Arab group of diplomats expressed strong support. Now, what's the expectation of the West when they bring Antonio Guterres under fire for actually highlighting the gross violation of human rights and the relentless genocide, as you put it? What are they expecting for him to change his discourse?
I think the apartheid state wants everybody in the world to believe that the history started on 7th October when Hamas launched a retaliatory attack. I use the word retaliatory because it was a pent-up anger of the Palestinian. While world knows, as UN Secretary General rightly put it, that this attack was not in vacuum. Obviously, it was in retaliation of the occupation. It was in retaliation of illegal settlers killing every next day Palestinians, miming and killing Palestinians every next day, and then arresting at least 6,000 to 7,000 Palestinians. Among them are children, minor, and they think they are the potential terrorists. This was not in vacuum. Something UN General Secretary rightly pointed out. Now the trouble is that the support he is getting is only from the Muslim countries for very obvious reason. My understanding is that the West is still backing up Israel, even in its nonsensical reaction to the statement of a UN Secretary General. Why can't a UN Secretary General make an independent state? And by the way, this statement is a very, very moderate, and it was a very reluctant statement. He did not use the word of genocide. He did not use the word of ethnic cleansing, which Israel is conducting inside Gaza. He is using only one word, that this attack was not in vacuum. So obviously, everybody knows that this attack is because of the occupation. The lingering reason is occupation. And Israel has been pursuing an agenda to make Palestinian irrelevant. It has been pursuing two-state solution as a non-viable project, because it has under pressure, using the influence of USA. Israel has managed to normalize its ties with many Muslim countries like UAE and many others in the African countries. But trouble is that if it also normalizes ties with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, then Palestinian cause would have become very irrelevant. And that is what Netanyahu, in one way or the other, has been saying, that he would not give the right of veto to the Palestinian. But I think after the launching of the military operation by Hamas on 7th October, things have changed. First, Saudi Arabia suspended these normalization talks, But now there are reports which is a source of concern that somehow or the other, under pressure from the US, Saudi Arabia has again resumed those talks. Maybe its format is different. Maybe it is at a lower level. Maybe some minute details are being discussed on how to normalize ties with Saudi Arabia once this war is brought to an end on the terms and condition of a state of Israel. Obviously, that means more carpet bombing. That means more ethnic cleansing. That means now they have killed 7,000-8,000 people. Maybe they are ready to kill 1 million people. You see, first they told people in Gaza that they need to move from one part of Gaza to another, and when they moved there, they resorted to carpet bombing there. So Israel has been telling everybody, and I think it's not a secret. As a matter of fact, Israel is teaching the Palestinians a lesson, and they think they are the legitimate source for bombing, because Israel says that they are human animal. So killing animal is perhaps something Israel feels very, very comfortable with.
Okay, now another recent development is Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan spoke to Pope Francis over the phone and again discussed the human rights violations in the region and the massacre that was being carried out. How much do we know about a response from Pope Francis so far, and do you think that perhaps this will have some positive contribution to a resolution in the near future, or at least a ceasing of the continuous bombing on the Palestinians?
I think President Tayyip Erdogan have been questioning the conduct of Israeli army right from the day one. He has been questioning the logic behind US bringing its 2 aircraft carrier in the Middle East. I think in that context, I think it is a part and parcel of President Tayyip Erdogan's continuing efforts to go for some sort of a diplomatic settlement, and he's trying to win over as many people as possible in the West. And obviously, Pope has an influence. But I think in this context, Pope obviously wants a peaceful settlement of this crisis. But I really doubt that at a time when Israel is not listening to anyone, neither he is listening to the President Tayyip Erdogan's so many good practical suggestions. It is not listening to the Arab countries. It is not listening to the privately given advice by the Western leaders. I really doubt that Pope's remarks or any statement in favor of Palestinians would help to bring an end to this conflict. That is unlikely to happen, given the kind of offensive posturing that we are witnessing from Tel Aviv. And also, I think we have to see that in case Hezbollah intervenes from the northern part of Lebanon, I think then there may be a change on the geostrategic calculus. In the geostrategic calculation, there would be perhaps change, because Israel needs a credible military threat to bring an end to this massacre, which we are witnessing right now. Unless there is a credible threat to Israel militarily, I really doubt that any initiative, no matter with how good intention that may be, can bring an end to this conflict.
Okay. Now, as you said, your opinion comes across, and you're telling us that there needs to be a credible threat. But something else I want to highlight here is the plight of the Palestinians didn't start on the 7th of October, as you said, and it spans across 75 years and beyond. But this time, we've certainly seen a lot of backlash from the public, from the people of the world, and including in America, from Washington to Chicago to LA. People have been retaliating in the form of street protests, social media shares, saying you need to stop the violence, you need to stop the massacre. How are you viewing this? And do you think that if this continues, this might have some impact?
It will certainly have some impact. We have seen that despite ban by Germany on pro-Palestinian protests, we have seen protesters on the streets. We have seen more than hundreds of thousands of protesters on the streets of London, and we have seen similar protests in the USA and many other Western countries. That is a positive sign. And if we look at the social media, Israel has lost war of narratives. At least people everywhere in the world. It's not only restricted to countries. They know Israel is an aggressor. Despite the fact that Israel has got a lot of influence on the social media network, they've been deleting pro-Palestinian posts, they've been blocking the accounts, projecting Palestinian cause. Despite that, we have seen that Israel has lost a war of narrative. Now, in short term, it would not have any impact, not much impact. It may have little impact on policy making in the West, but in the long run, what will be the impact? Israel may call it anti-Semitic, but I think there will be attack on Jews in the Western countries and elsewhere, wherever they move. Particularly, they have also normalized ties with UAE. There may be attacks on Jews in UAE and other Muslim countries where Israel has its diplomatic presence. So in the long run, net loser is going to be the apartheid state of Israel. What Netanyahu is not understanding that the two-state solution is something where everything can be settled down. And that two-state solution has to be as per the border which existed before 1967's war. That is the only way out. But since Netanyahu is known to be very extremist, he is pursuing a theological agenda where he wants, under his command, there should be a greater Israel. And that is why we have not seen any official map of Israel, because it has been expanding its territories every next day. It has been building up hundreds settlements, illegal settlements, and under the international law, militarily resisting the illegal settler is acceptable. So if Hamas has attacked and killed illegal settlers, that is a legitimate target, because these illegal settlers have been attacking Palestinians along with the Israeli army. So in that context, I think in a broader picture, we are seeing a media war, which I believe Palestinians have won. There is no doubt about it. Not only on social media, but even on the Western media, they have not been able to sustain a narrative. They've been calling Hamas a terrorist organization. Hamas, which is a governing party in Gaza. It was elected back in 2006. An elected party. It has a political face. It has its political presence in many Muslim countries. But nonetheless, West consider that by declaring Hamas as a terrorist organization, they would be able to eliminate its tentacles in Palestine. That is not going to happen. I think Israel is out of its mind. It has lost the common sense. Its policy is being operated through a rage that it has to retaliate because it has suffered the biggest humiliation since 1948. Never ever that kind of scenario developed in the occupied territories, where 4 Israeli journalists were made prisoners of war. And Hamas came deep inside southern parts of apartheid state, from where they took over at least 200 people. Among them were mostly illegal settlers and dozens of members of Israeli army, including those journalists. And they were beaten up in the streets of Gaza, like we see the pictures and movies seen in the movies, in traditional movies and dramas. Exactly that thing has happened. Now the trouble with the apartheid state is that its myth that Israeli army carries a sense of some sort of invincibility, incivility in terms of military strength, and Mossad being invincible. It has its network everywhere, human network on the ground in Arab countries and on the grounds in Gaza. It has a kind of a technology with which it says it has been preventing attacks from Palestinian fighters, and then it has been marketing to the those Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia, like Pakistan. Look, we have advanced technology. We will share it with you once you normalize ties with us. Now, the fact now that myth has been shattered, the myth of the technology has been shattered, the myth of Israeli army that it is invincible militarily, that has also been shattered. We have now come to realize that Israeli army is a very weak. It is comprising of on reservists who are not fully trained, and they don't want to pick up a fight with Hamas, and that is why now apartheid state has to heavily rely upon on its air force, which is indulging in carpet bombing. It has resorted to the carpet bombing because it does not have, the Mossad does not have the precise intelligence about the location of the fighters of Hamas. They are maybe deep in the tunnels. They are hiding somewhere in Gaza. It's a very small city. Nonetheless, they don't have the intelligence. Had they intelligence about the location of Hamas fighters, long ago they would have bombed it. Long ago they would have gone there and would have launched some sort of a ground operation, maybe at a limited scale. But they have resorted to kill civilians deliberately. I repeat, deliberately, just to teach lesson to the Palestinian, just to depopulate them. Now, you see, the reason they are killing journalists, at least 23 journalists have been killed, because they want no journalists inside Gaza, so that they can, because they don't want reporting, independent reporting from there. Nobody, they want that world should not know the scale of its massacre and scale of its ethnic cleansing in Gaza.
Javed, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure having you on the program. I appreciate your time and your insight.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geostrategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geostrategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.